Okay, here we are. Well, thanks again for the invitation to partner with you. And so thanks to the host university, first of all, Erlanga University, for this wonderful initiative. Also, thanks to Kazgu University for collaborating in this initiative. Special thanks to the conveners of today, so Dr. Ristawati, Dr. Koraboyev and Dr. Costa Buranelli. So thank you very much for taking this initiative. We as UNU-CRIS, we are very happy to partner with you because, as you probably know, the mandate of UNU-CRIS is exactly to study, to analyze regionalism worldwide, regionalism as it takes place in different parts of the world, to promote regionalism studies all over the world, to do research, to organize capacity building on the regionalism, regional governance, multi-level governance, regional integration, and so on. So we are very happy with this initiative, and I'm very glad to see that there are students from I think more than 25 countries all over the world. So it's so I would already like to congratulate you for this initiative and the success of this call. I prepared a short presentation to share with you a few ideas about comparative regionalism to set the scene, so to speak. And so let me move to my first slide. The first thing I think which I should not explain is the relevance of the topic of comparative regionalism. It is a very timely topic. It is a very relevant topic, not only from an academic perspective, but also from a more political and societal perspective. And you see a few pictures there. You will recognize some of these, let's say, events or situations in different parts of the world. You see pictures about ASEAN and the connection with the developments in Myanmar. You see people protesting for the EU-Mercosur agreement. You see Australians protesting against the Belt and Road Initiative. You see people protesting against the wall between the United States and Mexico. And you see, of course, references to the Brexit. So what you see there is that people, citizens, are aware of the importance of regionalism, regional governance. Obviously, in some cases, people want apparently less regionalism or less regionalism of a particular kind, and they want a different kind of regionalism, different regional policies. In other cases, they want clearly more of this, more connections between countries, better regulations, a more active regional organization, and so on. So what we see here is, in any case, an understanding, a growing understanding, I would say, of the importance of this regional level of governance within the context of multi-level governance, which is de facto what we have in this world. We have a world, when you look at it from the perspective of citizens, and you look at the number of policy areas where you see that, in effect, you have a combination there of local authorities designing policies, taking measures, adjusting to situations, reacting to challenges, local levels, regional levels, at the sub-national level, the supranational level, and then the global level. You have this interaction, and of course the challenges of governance taking place and policies being designed at different levels. Now, when you move to the the more academic study of regionalism. First question then is, of course, okay, what are we actually studying? And what is on our radar? And this is, of course, not, there is no unique answer to this question. It depends a lot on the research questions that we are asking ourselves. Our radar can be, let's say, broader, narrower in scope. The object of study can be more focused, broader. We can include, or we can focus, for example, on the institutionalized versions of regionalism, for example, the regional organizations, and there are already a few that have been mentioned before, ASEAN, the European Union, Mercosur, and so on. Or we can have a broader scope and also look at more informal expressions of regionalism, for example, in border regions, in collaboration between neighboring countries. We can look at cultural regions defined by a cultural identity. We can look at economic complexes where the region is defined by economic interactions and so on. So what is on our radar can be broader, narrower. That depends on us. That depends on the relevant, let's say, population of objects that we define for a particular research question that we want to answer. Now, comparative regionalism is approached from a number of disciplines, as you know, from political science, international relations. In the economics discipline, we are studying regions and regional integration, but also the geographers study regions, people in area studies, by definition, study a particular region, and so on. And so we know that from these different disciplinary angles, we study a region. But comparative regionalism is at the same time also a research program per se. Comparative regionalism is a research program in the sense of, let's say, the philosophy of science, where you have a research community which is still growing, a research community of people with different disciplinary backgrounds, but coming together and studying or sharing concerns and a research object, even if this research object is not unique and can change over time, but there is some idea of what our research object is. There is a theoretical core. There are a number of theoretical ideas that most of us will share. There is a program dynamics. It's an evolving research program, but there is a research program. And this summer school, in a way, is part of this. It's one of those elements that constitute, together with other initiatives and other scholarly work, this research program. So we are all part of this, even if this research program and our individual research programs might be, or in most cases are, overlapping with other research programs. Comparative regionalism is overlapping with, for example, comparative politics. It is overlapping with international trade theory. It is overlapping with globalization studies. It is overlapping with multi-level governance and so on. So it is an overlapping research program, but it has its own identity at the same time. It is also a research program that is sometimes being questioned. Some people say, well, comparative regionalism is characterized by a lack of conceptual clarity, and then you have these discussions going on about concepts, and they are still going on. That is true. There is a discussion going on, and already a very old discussion about, okay, but what is our dependent variable? What are we actually trying to explain? And there is no consensus about this. It is also a research program that has been questioned and criticized because it is perceived, but not only perceived, it has also been effectively the case, perceived as Eurocentric, because, among other things, because historically this community has been very much centered around the European case for historical reasons. Also, the European institutions have been promoting at different instances a model of integration. So this is a characteristic of this research program that we cannot deny, but I have the impression that we are, let's say, little by little leaving this behind, and that we let's say, have a much broader view of regionalism, that we are aware of the particularities of expressions of regionalism in different contexts, and that we do not necessarily need this model, if there is a model, to do our work. What we compare and the cases we compare can be varied and depend again on the research questions that we are asking. I will not say much about theories because there is I think your first lecture that is coming up after these initial interventions is exactly about theories. It's about theoretical frameworks, so I will not go into details here. I would only like to indeed mention that we have this theoretical framework. We have a number of theories, not necessarily very hard theories, but at least theorizing that can help us to structure our ideas, and then to come up with our own, let's say, design for our new research and our own research project. So we can rely on a number of things that are already there, not necessarily to then pick the right theoretical framework, but at least to, in an eclectic way, to use what is useful. These theories, especially the older theories, have very often been designed to study particular cases, but in many cases these theories are sufficiently abstract at the same time to be relevant to study other cases. Yeah? So it is up to us to evaluate these theories, these theoretical frameworks, and to combine the elements that are useful in an eclectic way. There is nothing negative about being eclectic, on the contrary. What is important, though, I think, is to try to cross the disciplinary boundaries. There is, I would say probably the core of what has been produced is in what you could call political science, IR. There is also a very important production in economics. It is important to cross these boundaries and to see what has been produced in different disciplinary environments, but essentially studying the same objects of study, and our regions, our regional integration processes. Not all these theoretical frameworks are by definition or have by definition a comparative element in it. But even the older theories that have been developed after the Second World War have in some cases, for example, if you look at the neo-functionalist literature, have already this comparative element in it. And in the very early writings in neo-functionalism, for example, you have already this ambition to try to come up with a more general theory. And if you want to have a more general theory about regionalism or regional integration, you have to look at different cases. And so from the beginning, there was this ambition to do this, and there have been empirical studies covering Europe, the Americas, Africa, for example, the sub-regions. So you already find it there in that literature, this theoretical ambition on the one hand, and then the organization of empirical studies comparing regions on the other hand. Also in other, let's say, literatures or areas of research areas like security studies and systems theory, you find this comparative work already about regional complexes, how regional security complexes are being formed and how they behave in the broader context of the global politics. Also in economics, you have the early developments in customs union theory, for example, where you also find very early on comparisons of how these free trade areas or customs unions behave and what their effects are across regions. More recently, you have the new regionalist school that has, I would say, revived the thinking about regions, and of which UNU-CRIS has also been part. I think the new regionalism has been important for a number of reasons, but I would say especially at the methodological level. We have become aware of the multiplicity of actors that are active at the regional level, and we have started to see regionalism as a much more complex phenomenon, which has a number of aspects to it, which has formal expressions, but also more informal realities that form part of this regional phenomenon. New regionalism has this, at the same time, this ambiguity with respect to comparability across regions. On the one hand, the new regionalists will say we should look beyond the EU, we should look at regionalism worldwide, and etc., etc. So there is this let's say this ambition to look at different cases of regionalism globally, not necessarily, and that is a very good evolution, not necessarily looking at the EU as a benchmark, but at the same time, as new regionalists are emphasizing the importance of context and regional context, at the same time there is also the message that comparability is not necessarily given. Comparability depends. Cases are comparable depending on the questions that you are asking. So there is some ambiguity there, but I would say in general, new regionalists have, let's say, changed our view on the regions, and then especially the multiplicity of aspects to regionalism. Just a few words about where this research program is heading to. As any academic area, this is obviously under constant discussion and debate, and that is how it should be. Some people have suggested that perhaps time has come for regionalism study to be mainstreamed, meaning that they are questioning the need to have this research program as a separate research program, but would, let's say, they suggest to reconnect this research program with, let's say, IR studies, for example, more in general, whereas others, and I am probably one of those others think that indeed this research program is still very valid, because it is of course connected to other debates and other approaches that are broader in scope, but there is or there are specific issues that require a specific research program. This challenge of cross-border governance is very specific and requires a specific research program. Also, the fact that when you look at the regions and the institutionalized regions, the fact that you have this important heterogeneity of cases. Regions, when you compare regions and regional organizations, they are quite different, one compared to the other. This is much less the case when you look at the national governance level or even the subnational governance level. You find municipalities, you find cities with certain characteristics all over the world. You find national governments with their national parliaments, etc., all over the world. But when you look at the regional level, in the supranational sense, there is much more heterogeneity, and that already by itself requires a specific attention to this regional, supranational, regional level of governance. What is also needed, I think, and this is what I was referring to when I showed you the pictures in the beginning also, is the need for what I formulate here as remaking the case for regional cooperation and integration. For some people, especially when you look at Brexit, for example, but you also see calls in other countries or questionings of these regional organizations. For some people, regionalism is perhaps exaggerating now, but is a historically failed project. So for some people, beyond the national policy level, and we do not need these regional constructions. At the same time, we see that in many policy areas, the challenges that we are facing are typically cross-border. When you look at, yesterday it was the day of refugees, but you look at migration more in general and refugees. If you look at the environment, if you look at epidemics, pandemics, as we have, or we are living currently, we can observe that many of these challenges are indeed cross-border, are transnational, and require responses, not only national responses, but these are inadequate, but they also need regional coordination, and very often they need regional responses, regional policies. So I think the task of the academic community is also to remake that case for regional cooperation and integration, in a more academic way, in a more, I would almost say scientific way, but in a more academic way, to prepare good arguments and say, well, regional cooperation is needed in these and these conditions, in these and these policy areas, because the national level, the local level is not able to cope with it. So I think by looking at best practices sometimes, or failures of national policies and so on, and in some cases trying to quantify potential benefits or costs of particular solutions, I think we can contribute to this, to the debate, the more political debate then on regional cooperation and integration. I think I will stop here for the sake of time. not without inviting you to have a look at our website for those interested in these topics. Especially for the students, I would like to draw your attention also to the second link you see there, which is the link to RICS, which is the Regional Integration Knowledge System, which is an information platform that we have been building with both qualitative and quantitative information on regional organizations. So please have a look at these if you are in need of systematic data on these topics. So that's the end of my short intervention. So thank you very much again to the organizers and the organizing institutions. I wish you all the best with your summer school, and without any doubt it will be an enriching experience. So thanks again, and I would say over to Dr. Philippe, I think, for his keynote speech. Thank you very much.